Welcome to Realizing Resilience, a podcast from the Connecticut Women's Consortium. We're not behavioral health professionals, but we're your gateway to real conversations with the experts. Each episode, we'll delve into the vast landscape of mental health, from personal stories to expert insights. Together, we'll bridge the gap between clinical expertise and personal experiences, connecting with diverse voices and perspectives. Join us for insightful conversations that demystify the world of mental health.
Steve Pemberton is a renowned senior HR executive, human capital strategist, and best-selling author. He is celebrated for his exceptional storytelling skills and his ability to engage with a wide range of audiences, from corporate America to nonprofit organizations. Throughout his career, Steve has held influential leadership positions at notable companies such as Monster.com and Walgreens, and most recently, he served as the Chief Human Resources Officer at WorkHuman. In this role, he was instrumental in promoting a culture of humanity and purpose in the workplace, focusing on employee engagement and performance management solutions. Steve's personal journey from overcoming the challenges of foster care to becoming a prominent figure in the HR world is captured in his best-selling book, A Chance in the World. This inspiring story was even adapted into an independent film, highlighting his resilience and determination. His second book, The Lighthouse Effect: How Ordinary People Can Have an Extraordinary Impact in the World, provides practical advice for transforming personal adversity into a mission to assist others. As a speaker, Steve Pemberton is highly praised for his collaborative approach and ability to tailor his messages to the specific goals of each event. He's a frequent presenter at major HR conferences and is often sought after by the media for his insights on workplace trends and talent strategies. His contributions to the field of HR and his commitment to making a positive impact on society have earned him numerous honors, including the Horizon Award from the U.S. Congress and honorary doctorates from several universities. Steve's dedication to community well-being is evident in his involvement with various boards, including the University and College Accountability Network and Boys Hope, Girls Hope. Through his Lighthouse Effect philosophy, he continues to inspire individuals and organizations to lead with purpose and compassion, making a lasting difference in the world.
Welcome back to Realizing Resilience. My name is Marisa.
And I'm Alana.
And today we have the pleasure of speaking with Steve Pemberton, one of the keynote speakers on our upcoming Trauma and Recovery Conference. So hello, Steve. Thank you for coming today.
Hi, Marisa. Alana, how are you?
We are doing good and excited to speak with you.
And the same.
We want to start off saying that you have got two books, A Chance in the World and then The Lighthouse Effect, that tell your story of you overcoming seemingly impossible odds and turning pain into purpose. Could you elaborate on how these experiences outlined in your books have shaped your understanding of trauma and recovery and how those titles kind of relate to your journey?
Sure. Well, it began with the books. Actually, began with a conversation with my oldest son when he was about 6 years old, when he was asking me, in essence, my origin story. And I realized that his questions and then those of his younger brother and their younger sister were going to continue because children at some point want to know about their parents' beginnings, so to speak, which is what led me to writing the first book, A Chance in the World. And then I wrote a young reader's version of A Chance in the World, and then The Lighthouse Effect was actually 3 books altogether. And for me, it was important to be truthful about what unfolded in my early years. I grew up in foster care in Massachusetts, southeastern Massachusetts, New Bedford, Massachusetts specifically. And I got lost in the gaps of a strained and burdened system. And unfortunately, I found myself in the cruel clutches of foster families, one in particular where I lived for over a decade, where every day was some kind of battle to be seen and heard and valued. At the same time, I'm fighting those battles. I'm also trying to solve the mystery of my identity because I have no memory of my mother or father and no memory of family. And so each day you're in these dualities of struggle. Although I can tell you that not once, though I was certainly technically dealing with trauma, I never thought of it that way. In fact, I'm pretty sure I never even used the word, because to me, it was a battle that had to be won, something I was trying to overcome. And subsequently, I developed some skills as a result of having to navigate those circumstances, which I think is one of the lost elements of understanding how people deal with struggles and challenges, is that they do develop a skill set. that can assist them in other parts of their life.
That's such a beautiful beginning for these books, that it was a way to tell your story to your family. And obviously from then on has had this like larger cultural impact. And so much of your work seems to be about empathy and kind of understanding people's personal stories. So how does your personal story influence your approach to leadership and to your human resources work?
There are so many unanticipated and unexpected outcomes of writing A Chance in the World. It took me about a year to write it. And in that year of getting up at 4:30 in the morning, every morning for a year straight, I never once in the quiet of those mornings ever consciously thought that I was writing chapters of other people's lives. But the response and the reaction upon publication and the film adaptation has reminded me and informed me that that's exactly what I did. And it awakens and should awaken all of us to this deeper human story that is about love and loss and faith and redemption and new beginnings and overcoming and senses of community. That's a very different way to look at systems and structures than how I feel we are bombarded now. In America, in my humble opinion, we're defining too many of our social interactions by our politics. And the nature of politics is opposition. The founding fathers actually acknowledged this by setting up a system of government where you'd have checks and balances, so that you wouldn't have one particular way of looking at things. So I find that it's having this corrosive effect on our culture. I think social media, the worst parts of social media are not helping, again, setting us in conflict, opposition, dissonance, discord. So what's the answer to all that? And the answer to all that is proximity. The closer that I can get to you and your story, and the closer that you can get to me and my story, we find these synergies and these similarities. Perhaps, the three of us are all first generation to go to college, perhaps. Perhaps there's a deep military service in our families, and maybe we all grew up on farms or in cities. If you spend some time in proximity, you begin to realize that, no, there are these common threads, and let's begin our conversations there, not start the conversations in difference. And subsequently, I think we realize that you actually need different points of view. You need someone to look at things completely differently than you do. So the architect and the artist are going to look at a challenge completely differently. And I suggest you need both those points of view. And I think that lastly shows up in how you do lead. I think leaders have a responsibility to create environments where you can have constructive dialogue, where you can solicit opinions from people who have lived very different experiences and lives than you do. And you find those common threads, those intersections, and it helps you make the most informed decisions. That's why human resources in organizations is so important. It's what the pandemic showed us, actually, the importance of HR. And I would take it a step further and say that the pandemic, the response to the pandemic, was HR's finest hour, because we were the ones tasked with getting you home safely once the lockdown began, and then setting you up for remote working, and then going through the process of returning to office and vaccinations, and now dealing with hybrid ways of working. And I'd like to think that coming together, coming from different perspectives, is how we can find healing, actually. And I don't think that's true altruistic or naive to believe that.
Absolutely. And I also feel, I'm thinking of how you said you made a young reader's version of A Chance in the World as well, and how that thought process and that mindset of just knowing other people's stories, how other people live their lives could be similar to yours, or it could be maybe even something you've never considered before, helps as you grow up to consider in like a human resource way, just other people's lives and how that might affect you or how you could be similar to someone else. So I love that you have that young reader's version to just kind of set themselves up, not only to feel not isolated as a youth, but help them as people grow, which is so important.
My audience for the young reader's version was a younger version of me. That was who I was writing to, in essence, and writing for. Because if I had encountered a story, even remotely like mine, at 10, 11, 12 years old, it would have completely changed how I saw my set of circumstances. I would have realized that it wasn't just me. I would have seen a pathway out of the circumstance. I almost certainly would have understood the power of literacy, which was so important for me. All those things I would have seen. So I felt as if I had a responsibility, actually, to write both the adult version, but also that young reader's version, which I really enjoyed the young reader's version in particular, because it's a different book. It has to be, because the audience is different.
Yeah. Do you feel as though kind of writing to the book you needed to read when you were younger is a way that you've kind of like, I guess, harnessed your story to help others in their narratives? And how do you think others can do that as well?
For me, writing it wasn't necessarily cathartic, but I do think you need something like that in your life. And I'm not sure what that would be for someone, but I do know it has to be something. And it could be music, it could be art, it could be writing, as it was for me. It could be painting, it could be athletics. I think that a great pain like that has to go somewhere, and it has to go somewhere productive, which is why we have to be very cautious about the language that we use, especially around young people when it comes to these matters. I don't use the word trauma in front of them purposefully, because they're already living it. And I don't want to put that label on them that you've been traumatized. They know it a lot better than we do. I knew it a lot better than anybody who was entrusted with my care. So I think we should talk to young people in the language of their dreams and not their circumstances, because the circumstances were not of their doing. They didn't create that. They didn't ask for that. And the young people's stories that I encounter, what has happened to them is devastating. They didn't ask to be sex trafficked. They did not ask to grow up in a home with two parents who were battling addiction. They didn't ask for those traumas, those experiences. So now the question is, how do we pivot to what your possibilities are? What are the possibilities waiting, for you? And that is, to me, actually most reflected in an archetype that sits all around us in society. And it's the archetype of the orphan, or a child who has lost something near and dear. And the irony of that archetype is the strength, the resilience, the grit, the determination that comes from that. So it's no accident that just about all the superheroes that we know have one thing in common. They were all orphans. Batman, Spider-Man, Superman, Wonder Woman, Harry Potter, Frodo Baggins, Jane Eyre, Black Panther, Little Orphan Annie, right? There's a reason for that they developed these superpowers because of what they had to navigate. And imagine speaking to young people through that lens of, did you know actually that you're a superhero? Did you know that? Now, what your superpower is, well, that's what I'm here to do, is to help you discover what that is. But just so you know, you're a superhero. Like, I begin my interactions and conversations in that place. And you should just see their body language changes, and they begin really wrestling with, okay, wait a minute, maybe there's a little bit more to this than I thought, which to me is a shifting of the mindset.
It's really admirable and also exciting for us to have you present, because I think your narrative and the way that you speak about this work is so about hope. And I love that, of kind of like, this thing happened to you and it sucked and there's nothing you can do about it, but what's the positive spin? So going a little bit into your presentation, can you just give us a little bit of a sneak peek of what people can expect from your keynote?
So when I write the first book, it becomes a bestseller and a movie, and I find myself being featured, feels like all over the world. And my agent says, well, hey, let's write a follow-up. And I did not want to write about me again. And the reason I want to write about me again was because I had encountered the stories of so many other people whose journeys I thought were remarkable and needed to be told as well. So that's why I said about doing and writing The Lighthouse Effect. And in doing so, I was trying to get across a broader message about how our lives are impacted by the people who come into our life, who are like human lighthouses. They guide our journeys. They protect our journeys, especially in times of uncertainty or when there are storms. The lighthouse as a structure is one that we no longer use, actually, because we have technology now to tell us where we are when we're on the sea or sailing along a coastline. But in days long ago, it was always the lighthouse. But we're still keeping the lighthouse. Isn't that fascinating? Why do we keep something that we no longer need? And it's because, my humble opinion, that the best elements of the lighthouse are also the things that we most seek in humanity. That the lighthouse is a selfless structure. It guides without judgment. It turns doubts into destinations. It helps you see possibilities through the circumstance. It gives what it can. It doesn't seek reward or recognition. It's comfortable with the uncomfortable. you can't thank the lighthouse. You can't sail up to it and say, thank you for guiding me. Over the years and hearing countless stories from other individuals, the reality is that everybody has a human lighthouse, one or more, and nobody needs to spend a lot of time thinking about it either. We all know. If I ask the two of you, who is your human lighthouse? You know, without me, even without, I can just tell, like you're already thinking, yep, I know exactly who they are. We all know who they are. Even if I made it difficult and said, you can't name people in your family who we're married to, our children, nieces, nephews, siblings, parents, can't name them. They're supposed to be lighthouses. And even still, we know. Because time kind of teaches us that if it weren't for those people, in my case, if it wasn't for the woman who brought me books, it wasn't for the director of a college access program, it wasn't for a kind and good man who took me in when I was 16, I'm not sure how my life journey would have turned out. And time teaches us the value and the importance of those people. As you get older, you're like, wow, my life would have been completely different had it not been for that elementary school teacher or a high school coach or whomever it is that you're thinking about. And that's really the point of my keynote, is that I want to remind us of the extraordinary power that we have to bend the arc of someone's life through the smallest of moments and the smallest of interactions. I think we again are spending too much time giving away that power to those who are on large platforms, and maybe they're celebrities, and some of those people are human lighthouses, and quite a few of them are not. At least they don't certainly compare to the people that the three of us are thinking about. And the other point I think that is so important is that those who are entrusted with that care are dealing with this. They're dealing with their great question of why. Why am I doing this work? Why does it matter? What kind of impact am I having? And my intention is to answer that question for them.
I honestly had to take a second because that was amazing.
No.
That I do like thinking of someone as a lighthouse. That idea of anyone and anything could be a lighthouse. That's amazing. Yeah, wow. I'm looking forward to your presentation at our Trauma and Recovery Conference. I think it's going to be, if not informational, just I'm going to walk away feeling something, and I'm excited for that, and just excited what you're going to be talking about with our audience. I think it's going to be really great. And I appreciate not only you presenting at the conference, but talking with us today and taking time out from being broadcast all over the world to speak with us today.
No, I'm honored to be with you. I selfishly, so it's a way of continuing to honor the people who had such an impact upon me. I get to keep the three of them in particular, who I'll talk about. I get to keep their journeys alive. I've lost them all fairly recently too, and so I get to continue to honor, their life and memory. But I also get to introduce you to some other people too, people who I met along my life journey, which is why I wrote The Lighthouse Effect. And I wrote about these 10 people who I encountered at different stages of my life, as a young boy, as a young man, as recently as just a few years ago. And I take you all over the world, from a soldier defending America in Vietnam to a father-daughter meeting for the first time in Puerto Rico, to the tragic events on the morning of 9/11. And in these moments and in these interactions, to your point, something powerful unfolded, even in the midst of what was a great difficulty. There was heroism there. And from, at first glance, seemingly ordinary people. Because I think you said something quite instructive there, that any of us in any moment can be someone's lighthouse. And in a lot of cases, Marisa, we are somebody's lighthouse and don't realize it. One of the other realities of the lighthouse is the lighthouse, as an architectural structure, never knows who sees it, never knows who is guided by its very presence, though there is no direct interaction between them and the lighthouse, because it's off in the distance. The lighthouse, ironically, does not say, come to me, because wherever you see the immediate area around the lighthouse, it's dangerous there. In fact, you're not supposed to sail towards the lighthouse. The lighthouse is not there to do that. It's there to point you the other way. That is the way to safe harbor. And I think the most inspiring human beings in our world, in our societies, in our lives are just like that.
I think this is a great message too for our audience, because we're going to have kind of a wide variety of mental health professionals, but I feel like people don't often realize that sometimes trying is enough. Like, as a helper, you get so exhausted feeling like you're not doing enough or you don't have enough skill to properly support. But that selflessness of just attempting to be the guide sometimes can be enough. It's a lovely message. I'm really excited for the presentation.
Well, Lana, there's something you're highlighting, something that is unfolding, and it's a very serious matter: the turnover. The turnover of those in the capacity, who serve in the capacities of trying to help people, has been unprecedented since the pandemic. It doesn't matter where you look: mental health counselors, teachers, nurses, first responders. Talk to anyone in those sectors and they'll tell you that they're seeing numbers anywhere from 30 to 40% turnover. And there's a lot of reasons for that. What I said earlier, the constant conflict that is all around us is wearing people down. And those who are trying to kind of stem that tide get overwhelmed by it and just say, okay, enough's enough. Even lighthouses need lighthouses. Even lighthouses do. And it's important for us to recognize the community of support that we have to be to one another as well. To help people through trauma and into recovery is almost always the long game. Almost always the long game. And in a lot of cases, you don't get to see the full completion of the story, right? But that's the essence of faith, is to put some goodness out in the world and believe that it will have some impact at some point.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great way to kind of like end the conversation here. Just kind of, even if you don't know the end of someone's story, doesn't mean the story isn't happening or there isn't something going on. So I appreciate, like I said before, I really appreciate you taking your time to speak with us today and giving us an insight on what to expect for the Trauma Recovery Conference in October.
I appreciate the two of you. Thanks, Marisa. Thanks, Alana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve will be presenting The Lighthouse Effect, A Chance in the World on the second day of our Trauma and Recovery Conference on Friday, October 18th. There are a variety of flexible attendance options available, from one-day virtual to a full 2-day on-site experience. Head over to traumaandrecoveryconference.com, linked in the description, to learn more and secure your spot now. Links will be in the description, so learn more about Steve and his work and keep up with us at the Connecticut Women's Consortium. Thank you for tuning in today, and see you next time.